Guys, how often do you think you answer a question with a guess, like percentage-wise?
Oh.
And you do have to count this one, because I assume there's not a firm answer.
I would say at least 90% of the time. There are so few things that I know with precision, even down to like, you ask me what my phone number is, and I have to think a little bit. Even if it is a piece of knowledge I am sure that I have, the intonation with which I'm answering the question is that of a guess.
Kyle, I mean, if Ceri's is 90%.
No, your confidence level's got to be way high. Also, my self-confidence, very low. So we got to, like...
I'm good at acting like my self-confidence is higher than it is, maybe. I feel like whatever percentage is confident, I say it confidently, and then immediately in my head I go, that was completely incorrect. I shouldn't be trusted on this.
Like, it should have been a guess, but it was not.
Yeah.
Welcome to Butter No Parsnips. Every week on Butter No Parsnips, your hosts Emily Moyers and Kyle Imperator take you on an adventure through the weird, wacky, wonderful, and sometimes even wicked world of one wayside word. Strange characters, delightful bits, and general joyousness abound. Join them as they test each other's etymological expertise.
Hey everybody, welcome to Butter No Parsnips. I'm Emily Moyers.
And I'm Kyle Imperator.
And today we are joined by special guest Ceri Riley. Ceri is a science communicator who co-hosts the science comedy podcast SciShow Tangents. She's built a career out of helping people think critically about storytelling and online education, from YouTube channels to digital games. She first combined her loves of biology and media by double majoring at MIT, which hopefully gives her some nerd cred, but she spent her undergrad making videos and comics instead of trying to become Iron Man. Ceri, it's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to be here and dive into linguistics. Usually I'm stuck in the science box in the corner, and I guess we'll be doing both.
Yeah, we've got it all for you today. Whatever else you want to. It's a buffet. You get to choose. Yeah. Ceri, I have a question for you. This one's less guesswork here. Do you have a favorite word?
Everything's a guess, Kyle. That's the thing. Not 90%.
Yes,
I'm also guessing.
We're rounding.
A word that I enjoy. I'm always bad with favorites also, but I really like the word worm, like the squiggly guys in the ground, because I think the etymology of worm is something like the squiggly guy. It's about how it moves, and there are so many things that were called worms. I think the same root word became worm, like the dragon, because of how it had like a serpentine tail. Like serpents at some point were called worms. It just shows how we're making everything up. Taxonomically, we're making a lot of things up. Animal-wise, we're making a lot of things up. And it's just a very fun word to say. Like, who doesn't like
it feels expressive on the thing itself. Yeah.
And you can say it in funny ways too. Like my partner and I call gummy worms gummy worms instead.
That's the way I'm going to say it from now on. That sounds like a better life.
There's a gardening store by me that doesn't have any advertisements outside, except for in the ground they've got like individual letters planted, and it's just all caps. Worms! So every time I pass, I go, worms!
You don't need any other advertisement.
Yeah,
all you need to know.
That's
worms.
I want to go now, honestly. So,
Well, worm is a fantastic word, but today I have chosen a word specifically with our guest in mind. And Ceri, it might be, I'm hoping it's one that you've heard before, maybe not, who knows, but I'm hoping to teach you and our audience and Kyle a little bit more about it. Are you guys ready for your word?
Yes, as ready
without
as
a doubt. 100% sure.
Your word this week is stochastic. Stochastic. Stochastic.
Stochastic.
Ceri, have you heard this word?
I think so. I've heard words similar to it. I bet I could get there. I bet I could guess my way there.
I feel like we've talked about this before in like one of our medical episodes. I mean, well, is it a Latin word?
It is a Greek word.
Greek.
As so often occurs.
And I assume perhaps wrongfully, that it's an adjective.
It is an adjective. The noun form is stochasticity, which I hate.
Oh, no. That makes me change everything that I had in mind about this word. I thought it had something to do, like, immediately, like, with, I don't know, like your intestines. I don't know.
I'll tell you, Kyle, you're on the wrong track.
Okay. Give me a hint.
The hint I have is probability.
Oh.
Kyle was so saddened by that name.
It doesn't help me at all. That puts me in a worse place.
A lot of things in the human body are probability, though. So maybe it is, in a circular way, human body related. That is one of my favorite things about biology. Is when you start diving into the squishy bits, it's all chemical reactions. And then when you look at those chemical reactions, as much as we would like to say, and when you're in biology classes, they start teaching you about how, I don't know, you have an enzyme and its ligand, and it fits like a key into a lock, and it needs to do that over and over and over again to keep you alive. That key, finding that lock, is all probability.
Wow.
And so we
Scary.
you can't think about it too hard. Otherwise, you get very scared about why we're alive, how we're alive, even at all. And then you like transform that, or at least, and I say you as in me, you transform that into like awe that we're alive, and like wonder how amazing it is that my body just doesn't like fall apart at every given moment. But yeah, so many of those processes that keep our body going, even like oxygen binding to the blood cells that go through our body. Oh, that's probability. It's a very high probability, but there's a chance it'll go wrong too.
I like that. That gives
Did
me
that like help?
It does.
Yeah, it didn't help with stochastic at all.
No,
but it helps reassure that you know what you're talking about.
I feel like maybe stochasticity is the probability of survival or something like that.
Oh, and stochastic is describing whether or not you'll live.
Yeah. Stochastic. Yeah, if you are stochastic, then you're survivable. I don't know.
That is not quite it. Ceri, would you like to take a whack at it?
Yeah. So the reason I remember it is because I would confuse it with another word. And I could be wrong. Again, this is a guess. All of my knowledge is approximate. So in chemistry, there's this concept of stoichiometry or stoichiometric things, which sounds kind of like stochastic, but is not the same thing, I think. I think stoichiometry is like when you're balancing chemical reactions, and it's like the proportions of how much of one chemical is going to react to another and how much product you're going to get. And I would always get it confused with something that's stochastic, which is mathematical related. And I guess they're both kind of mathy. They're both kind of sciencey related. And isn't stochasticity like randomness?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
So the Oxford English Dictionary defines stochastic, the adjective, as randomly determined, following some random probability distribution or pattern so that its behavior may be analyzed statistically, but not predicted precisely.
So guesses.
Guesses.
It all comes back to guesses.
Yeah. So it is like subtly different from the word random. And I was trying to work out exactly how. It seems like the exact difference between stochastic and random is like kind of up for interpretation. It partially seems like if you're talking about it in a math context, you say stochastic. And if you're not, you say random.
If you want to sound a little bit smarter, you say, oh, that's so stochastic of you.
Yeah.
XD, I'm so stochastic.
Rar, smiley face.
Yeah. I could just be a little stochastic sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tongue out, very of the era.
Yes. Yeah. I found a Stack Exchange forum talking about the difference, and someone said stochastic means non-deterministic or unpredictable, whereas random generally means unrecognizable, not adhering to pattern.
Okay.
Do those sound like two different things to you?
Honestly, no.
If I don't think about it, it does.
Yeah. I know randomness is very hard for humans to achieve. Like if you say pick a random number, like we're bad at picking a random, like we're good at patterns, we're bad at randomness. And so whenever we're trying to create a random number generator, we look to nature and random things like how a lava lamp bloops up and down. or the ocean waves and how they, I don't know, swirl around something. And we pick numbers out of nature because that is an easier way to pick a random number than having a human try and come up with a random number because we're so patterned. And so the difference that you just articulated makes it think like random is truly chaos, and then stochastic is we don't quite understand it. It could be, it's like,
sure,
it's like a little chaotic, but we can't model it fully almost.
Sure. I think stochastic has more of like a studied intervention, like it's affected by the observer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fun.
But let's start with some etymology, because that's our bread and butter here, you know? So stochastic is derived from the ancient Greek adjective stokastikos, which meant capable of hitting, literally, or metaphorically acting based on guesswork. It referred to both, even in ancient Greek. And that came from the Greek verb stokazomai, which meant to aim for, to shoot at, or to try to make out, or to guess at. And that in turn came from the noun stokos, which could have referred to a target or aim, or a guess or conjecture.
And did it mean both like the physical act of like throwing something, like if I was throwing a rock at a target or whatever, like a Greek archer shooting a bow at a target?
Yeah, I think it meant both, like literally throwing something at something, or just like throwing a guess at the wall. It meant both. As early as 1622, we see stochastic with a CK on the end appearing in English texts, as well as stochastice with a CE appearing in Latin texts, both of which were used to mean pertaining to conjecture related to guesswork. And that is the important one, because stochastice, the Latin, was used by Jacob Bernoulli in his 1713 book Ars Conjectandi. Does the name Bernoulli ring a bell to either of you?
It's like fluids, right? Bernoulli. He's a fluid guy.
You got it.
Okay.
I mean, he's got to be. He wrote a thing about cognac. Right? That's the fluid guy.
Yeah, you got it.
Wind and air motion, I feel like, is Bernoulli.
Yeah.
He's like, why
Isn't
airplanes?
But the Bernoulli effect is like the plane wings.
Yeah, the thing that you were drawing is like a spiral in the air. That's what I think, too. I'm sure it has a very precise layout, but that's Bernoulli.
Perfect. So I think what you're talking about is the Bernoulli principle, which came from Daniel Bernoulli. Turns out I didn't know until this week, the Bernoullis were a family of scholars, mostly mathematicians. So some of the notable members are Johann Bernoulli, who I think did a lot of work on calculus, Johann's son, Daniel, who's responsible for the Bernoulli principle, which relates to fluid dynamics, and Johann's brother, Jacob Bernoulli, who you might know from the Bernoulli numbers that are part of like mathematical analysis. I'm not going to pretend I know about math.
We're not going to spend the rest of the episode talking about Bernoulli numbers, Emily.
And there were like more Bernoullis than that, and other things named after Bernoulli. Bernoullis slapped their name on a lot of crap.
It's kind of like the imperialism of topics.
Yeah. They've colonized the field of math.
Getting our hands into everything. So Jacob Bernoulli's work on the Bernoulli numbers was done in this book, Ars Conjectandi. That's with a J, not with a G. And that translates to the art of conjecturing, as in conjecture, which dealt with probability theory. And in that text, Jacob Bernoulli uses the phrase Ars Conjectandi sive stochastice, which has since been translated as the art of conjecturing or stochastics.
Okay, sure. We could do that.
Fast forward 200 years, in 1917, statistician Ladislaus Bortkiewicz was writing about Bernoulli's work and translated his Latin stochastice into German as stochastic with just a K. And this is, I think, what brought the word into the modern era and gave it the current mathematical usage that we have today.
Well-traveled.
Yeah, and not a Bernoulli.
No, just good old Bortkiewicz.
Yeah.
Bortkiewicz, which may or may not be the Slavic Bernoulli.
Yeah. Bernoulli's all the way down. Little do we know. Yeah.
So it is also worth noting that the word stochastic very often shows up as part of the phrase stochastic process or stochastic model. I don't know if that's ever come up for you, Ceri.
Not really, but that makes sense to me in that I don't understand what the word is exactly, but you would use it rather to describe any sort of randomness. You're describing a specific thing as hard to model except for in probability, and we don't know for certain. So usually when you have some sort of compound word in science like that, like the stochastic model, the stochastic process, like you were saying earlier, you have to try to analyze the system to understand that it is a stochastic process. It's not an inherent quality of the thing itself.
Yeah, exactly. So a stochastic process is literally just a process that unfolds randomly and unpredictably, and we can like map out the probabilities of the various outcomes over time. And that's the part that kind of breaks my brain, is when they get into like formulas of chances. And like it's like once math starts to get like not tangible and theoretical is where it loses me entirely.
You didn't try to like do the stochastic process with like a bag of M&Ms or something to help you visualize?
So this is what I did manage to grasp, is that stochastic process isn't something that we do. It's not like a process that a scientist undertakes. It's like something that we see happening and try to model it.
So you're witnessing it and trying to describe it.
Yeah. So one example is something called Brownian motion, aka the Wiener process. Wiener. Yep, there he goes.
I know Brownian motion. I don't know is the Wiener process, but
Brownian motion is when there's a plate of brownies in front of me, that brownie's going to be in motion.
Yeah.
You know?
And then after you eat the brownie, there's a little bit of Brownian motion.
Yeah.
Like 6 to 10 hours later.
Yep.
But scientifically, that's like, I can keep guessing. Brownian motion, that's like particles in a liquid, right?
Yeah,
and they kind of swirl. They swirl around, do other things. Because so my background's in biology, and there's a lot of particles and liquids swirling around in us, around us, in the world. So much is suspended in water.
Yeah. And so the movement of like particles suspended in water is described as a stochastic process because it moves in ways that we can't really predict. And its movement is like continuous. So you can measure it down to like infinitely small increments of time, but it's always like it never like trends in any predictable way. Ceri, what like context have you come across Brownian motion? Can you like talk about like specific?
So many. I feel like it is one of those terms that as a science communicator, much like stochastic, you run into it a lot. And it's like, oh, this thing just behaves in a Brownian motion. Like this thing can be modeled with Brownian motion. It's like, oh, there you are again. This thing that I don't quite understand because it means that we can't quite, it's just a lot of wiggles and we don't quite understand it. And it's kind of random and we can't predict it. And that's Brownian motion. But
it wiggles like a worm.
Like a worm. It's all worms.
It's all worms.
It's worms all the way down.
Yeah. Bernoullis and worms. That's it. You're either a Bernoulli or a worm.
Oh man. What are the two meme? Like separate qualities of Bernoullis and worms in this world?
Well, I am a worm for sure, not a Bernoulli. I feel like you have to be down to earth to be a worm and a little uppity to be a Bernoulli.
Yeah, that's a good separation there.
Yeah, I like that. So this is perfect because the other example I have is the Bernoulli process, which is also named after Jacob Bernoulli. And that describes something like flipping a coin over and over again. In that case, it's a series of individual trials rather than continuous motion. But each trial has the same odds every time. It's 50-50 heads or tails, and it's not impacted by previous outcomes at all. So you are always going to have a fresh 50-50 every time. So there's
that makes sense.
Predictability.
That's a good way of like separating the two.
So how am I doing, you guys? Are we like starting to grasp stochasticity?
Yeah, I mean, I think I get it. I don't know if I get why, but I get it.
Yeah, I don't think at the end of this episode I could still tell you the difference between stochasticity and randomness precisely.
I mean, I think colloquially they are both used interchangeably, so you could just start slipping stochastic into your everyday conversation and
Great.
Already have, honestly. I sent out 10 emails while we were recording.
Hey, something stochastic for you. A stochastic thought, : what if we start another podcast?
Yeah, that was just to Ceri.
Yeah.
Sorry, Em.
Oh, wow, I'm being cut out.
Oh, no, yeah.
I gotta shape up.
Sorry, I didn't mean to spoil your email on air, Kyle. I didn't
it was
know that
to
was private.
Ceri and a worm.
Yeah.
So the first appearance of that phrase, stochastic process, is in English in 1934 from American mathematician Joseph Doob, which is another Great name.
Doob.
Joey Doob.
Joey Doob.
Joey Doob loves his worms.
His gummy worms.
Yeah.
But the English was directly translated from the German phrase Stochastischer Prozess, coined by mathematician Andrei Kolmogorov in 1931. And the astute listener might have noticed that that's twice now I've brought up a German usage, but they also might have noticed that the writers Ladislav Bortkiewicz and Andrei Kolmogorov do not sound especially German.
Yeah. Is there some sort of, I don't know, Soviet scientific university in Berlin in the 30s?
Well, so during the late 1800s, early 1900s, Austria and Germany were like very major contributors in the field of, like in a lot of fields, but in the field of mathematics as well, and huge like hubs for international research and scholarship. So it was not uncommon for writers from other countries to be writing and publishing their papers in German, is what I learned.
That makes sense to me. This is once again a half fact. Now I'm going to just signal instead of just saying my thing. I'm going to be very conscious of it and say this is a half remembered fact. So as my bio said, I went to MIT, and as part of that, I don't know why, I think someone handed me a box of old records from the admissions office and were like, look through these. And because I was a nerd, I looked through them. There was a point where for MIT, to get admitted to MIT, you needed to know, I believe it was German or French or Italian, because those were the languages of science, because so much scientific writing was happening in like the Europe part of the world.
Yeah.
And of course, the American institutions like hailed Europe as like, oh, that's where the real science is happening, regardless of what was happening around the rest of the world. So you needed to pass or have a proficiency in one of those languages. And it makes sense that, I don't know, all these Slavic mathematicians were speaking and writing in German, because that was probably one of the languages of science. And so you just had to learn it. You had to publish in it. You had to write, speak, whatnot, if you wanted to feel like you were contributing to this canon that science agreed was legit.
Yeah. And why they would then all be reaching English if all these MIT researchers needed to be reading in German. They'd be like, let me put this in English for everybody over here.
Yep. Drag it back to the US, translate it. And now English is one of those languages of science where so many papers are published in English, or English and another language, it feels like. When and I guess my own bias is that I speak English, so I can only read the English papers rather than the other languages.
But like, do you come across a lot of like papers from, like, for example, Slavic researchers that are written in English for that reason?
I think so. Like, even universities around the world generally have like English papers. So it'll be from the University of Taipei, but it'll be a paper in English instead of some dialect of Chinese or something like that. So, and I don't know if they also publish in another language, but a lot of papers that I find in my research are from around the world, but in English, so that I can read it, but say that this is from a European university, that it doesn't necessarily speak English as part of their, like, it's not their country's national language.
Sure.
I feel like writing things, as many things in the same language as possible, is probably good for preventing people from doing the same research at the same time and releasing the same thing in different languages and then being like, oh, they did this already.
There we go. And then we've got like Rosetta Stones of academic papers because it exists in multiple languages.
Yeah. Thank God someone wrote the paper on insect poop in German and Korean. We can now do our due diligence.
That would be very cool to like know the word poop in all the languages. Everyone defaults to like, hello, how are you? Yeah. I don't speak language, but if you just picked a different word, like poop or worm, and be like, oh, you know my fun fact? I know how to say worm in 16 different languages.
My stochastic fun fact.
Yeah. Yes, so but during the early 20th century, German was very much the language of science. The sort of downfall of that is that a lot of those scholars were Jewish, and thus university math departments were often targeted by the Nazis. So that was kind of the end of that era. But apparently before that, it was great. Swedish mathematician Harold Cramér called the 1930s, quote, the heroic period of mathematical probability theory. which is a very dramatic
nice.
way to describe mathematical probability theory.
They were like, we got to really recruit I don't even know what the noun is, the probabilitists.
That's good.
Probabiliticians?
Probabilitician sounds like it's probability magic.
I mean, it basically is.
Yeah.
What is magic but probability also?
True.
That's right.
True.
It's the improbable. Yeah, and a bunch of mathematical concepts emerged from Germany during this period, including words that we've integrated into English, such as polytope and ergodic.
Could you define them?
So polytope is just like any shape in any number of dimensions. So like a polygon is a 2-dimensional polytope, a polyhedron is a 3-dimensional polytope, and you can go on and on into any number of dimensions. And ergodic, that one was tougher for me to understand. I won't lie, you guys. So Wikipedia says, in mathematics, ergodicity expresses the idea that a point of a moving system, either a dynamical system or a stochastic process, will eventually visit all parts of the space that the system moves in a uniform and random sense. I guess that means like when the DVD logo is bouncing around the screen, it will eventually hit all of the screen.
It's gonna.
That makes sense to me. That seems like a really good way of saying what you just said. Another way. I have no way to disprove it. So that's it. That's the law now.
It's truth. It's facts.
Yeah.
We all agree.
Yeah. Emily, are you a mathematician now?
Absolutely I am.
Yeah.
As well as words where we just borrowed the German, such as Nullstellensatz. That is literally the German words for zero locus theorem, and it refers to that.
It's the period between when the locusts arrive, the 7 to 11 years. Yeah, I know.
A theorem that establishes a fundamental relationship between geometry and algebra is what Wikipedia says.
That feels pretty big. That feels like a big theorem. Not a look, because geometry is pretty big. Algebra is pretty big. Those are whole high school classes there.
Yeah. I had algebra too, so it was double big.
At least had a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that connects both of them. Ooh, spicy.
Spicy.
I won't keep us in math world forever, though, you guys, because stochastic is kind of a broad term, and it can be adapted to fit kind of anything randomness related. So the word shows up in a bunch of different contexts. Ceri, I know you mentioned like you're familiar with Brownian motion. Are there any other places where you feel like you've seen randomness come into play in science?
Oh, I feel like it's in so many fields of science. Everyone's trying to deal with randomness. So Brownian motion, again, like biology, things moving around. Even when I was trying to justify Kyle's guess of probability and randomness in that way, like I'm sure there's stochastic processes within our bodies as well. Computer scientists are really into this idea of randomness, I feel like, and trying to understand both how to generate probably stochastic models and stochastic processes with computers, which are very ordered. So how do you create disorder out of order? And I imagine that there are some things that computers do. So when you're starting to talk about AI models or machine learning and like the black box that happens in the middle. So the way that you describe machine learning a lot of the times is there are inputs and then the computer does something and there are outputs, and you can evaluate the outputs and say you're doing a good job, you're doing a bad job. But a lot of machine learning processes, you're not entirely sure what the computer is doing in the middle there. It's just especially with reinforcement learning, you're reinforcing it towards the results that you want.
So that middle section is the black box that you mentioned?
Yeah, the middle section is the black box of reinforcement learning, I think. I'm not a computer scientist, but I imagine that you could describe, and this is me, again, guessing now, but like something that's happening in that middle section as a stochastic process. It's, I don't know, it's called a neural network because it's modeled after your brain, and we don't exactly understand how those connections work. And so, probably there's something going on there related to randomness in machine learning in these development of algorithms that we don't quite understand.
That's super fascinating.
Yeah. Computer scientists, don't at me. Or do, and teach me how to explain it better.
You can add us on Ceri's behalf. We'll take that. We'll take that wave. So one of the big examples of stochastic method that I found are the Monte Carlo methods, which are these group of methods that I think all revolve around calculating very complex things in approximate terms through random sampling. So like if you have something that could have a million outcomes, you just take a select number and you can kind of generate a model based on that. I think that's like a drastically oversimplified definition, but hey, probability theory is a lot, you guys.
Is it called Monte Carlo because it's related to gambling?
Yes.
Is it really? Wow, okay.
So the first experiments with the Monte Carlo methods were in the 1930s by Enrico Fermi, who you might recognize for his work on the Manhattan Project. But it was further developed in the 1940s by Stanislaw Ulam, who became interested in working out permutations of card games, partially inspired by his gambling addict uncle, who was a frequent patron of the Monte Carlo casino. So that's why it's called that.
Okay.
Sarah, you had a question also. I didn't want to miss that.
No, it was the same thing, and I realized I was conflating in my head Monte Carlo and the Monty Hall problem, which is like if you have doors.
Wait, hang on. Don't talk about the Monty Hall problem because we will later.
Talk about that too. Is there a Monty Python problem too?
Yeah, but that's different.
How silly is the walk?
Yeah, how stochastic is the silly walk?
Yeah, what is your stochastic process to generate a silly walk, the silliest walk?
Yeah, what is the probability that the parrot is still alive? Yeah, so the Monte Carlo methods were indeed used for the Manhattan Project when they were creating simulations, and also at Los Alamos during the development of the hydrogen bomb. So that's some context from that one. There's also, as you mentioned, Ceri, some computer science context here. There's something called stochastic ray tracing, which, according to Wikipedia, is the application of Monte Carlo simulation to the computer graphics ray tracing algorithm, which I think is used in like the rendering of digital images. It's sort of applying stochasticity to that.
I feel like I've heard that with regards to video games.
There we go. I mean, Kyle, this is... You're pretty big in the computer rendering world, in the pixel graphics world.
Yeah. Me and Miyamoto, we are best buds.
Yeah, you're ray tracing with each other, tossing those rays, shooting them back and forth.
I also ran across something called stochastic resonance, which is a phenomenon in which a signal that is normally too weak to be detected by a sensor can be boosted by adding white noise to the signal. And for some reason, having that like background white noise makes other noise stick out better. And that can be used, has been used to create medical devices that like enhance sensory feedback, such as vibrating insoles, to help people walk better that can't walk so good.
Oh, wait, that's crazy.
Yeah, because it helps them get feedback better by having that like vibrating white noise.
That's such a huge improvement. That is awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. And not something that I would think of. Like, when you get into math like this, some things are intuitive, but some things are not. And the idea of what if we just add white noise to something and it'll make it way better is wild to me.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was a serendipitous discovery.
Yeah. I feel like some of these have to be. You either just stumble upon it or you take a guess. Yeah, we need something in by the end of the week.
You're like taking a nap. I'm so stressed out. Turn on my white noise machine, and then it just works.
And the other interesting context I found was something called stochastic music, which, Kyle, you will love. Have you ever heard of Yannis Xenakis?
I have.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he is I think, French and Greek composer who pioneered the use of mathematical models in music, such as applications of set theory, stochastic processes, and game theory. And he coined the term stochastic music.
Oh, you know what? I think we played one of his pieces in high school band.
Hilarious.
Is that crazy? Like there was one like week where our conductor was like, let's just try this. And we were like, what is this? And he's like, I know, right? You're going to love it. And it's just like a page of scribblings and it's like, play. You're going to love it. We did. It's awesome.
Amazing. So you knew what stochastic things were all along. It was deep buried in your memory banks when your high school band conductor was like, now be stochastic about it.
Be stochastic about it.
The stochasticity was inside us all. And I hope that I have brought it from within out to the surface and taught you guys a little bit about this word. And now, Ceri, I'm going to challenge you. Do you think you can use the word stochastic in a sentence?
Oh, we've been jokingly using it this whole time. So I'm gonna, yes. If you just look around us in the universe, you can find stochastic processes all around, from the Brownian motion of a leaf in a swimming pool to the stochastic music of some very eccentric composers to physics and computer science and any field that you can imagine. There's a little bit of stochasticity all around you.
Beautiful, stupendous, topped every sentence Kyle has ever given at the end of the episode.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Excellent. And every sentence I've ever given at the end of an episode. So.
No, you both did so many good sentences this episode. It's great.
Guys, before I run us way over time, can we play a little quick game, maybe?
Of course.
Please.
This week's game is called What Are the Odds? There are certain questions of probability which have gained popularity among mathematicians and others because they have seemingly paradoxical answers. So I'm going to ask you these questions, and I want you to try to give me these answers. Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
I thought we were going to Monte Carlo.
Me too.
Yeah, hop on a plane. Where a plane ticket just showed up in my email. Also from Kyle?
Stop.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get there by the end. The first question I have: if you've got any random number of people in a room, any random group of people, there will be some probability that two of them share a birthday. My question is, how many people need to be in that room for that probability to be better than 50%?
Oh.
And the closest number of people will get the point here.
I'm going to guess just 100. 100 people.
In my mind, I was trying to think of people I know that share my birthday and how many people I met in between meeting that person.
Trying to really calculate this.
Yeah. I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go with 150.
Ceri gets that point. The answer is 23.
What?
Oh.
Yes. So this question is uncreatively known as the birthday problem, and the counterintuitive answer is often called the birthday paradox. It revolves around the fact that you're looking at every possible pair of people, not just what are the odds that someone matches a birthday with you.
Sure.
So adding up all of those individual probabilities means that if you have just 23 people in a room, there's a better than 50% odds that two of them have a matching birthday.
I think every time I'm in a room with more than 23 people, I'm going to get on a loudspeaker and say, everybody announce their birthdays.
I bet two of you might match.
I think that's a great icebreaker question. Anytime you're in a room, but not less than 23, because then your magic trick won't work, or your probability trick won't work.
So the next time you're in a room with 24 people,
break it out.
All right, so that's 1 point to Ceri. Next question. A casino offers a game that involves flipping a coin over and over again. The winnings start at $2, and every time you roll tails, the winnings double. The first time you roll heads, the game ends, and you take whatever money you've earned up to that point. Question is, how much money should you be willing to pay to play that game? And again, I'll give the point to the closest.
You told us that coin flipping is one of those things where the next flip doesn't have anything to do with the previous flip.
That's important.
$2. I'm only paying $2 to play this game.
Ooh, Ceri's only paying $2. Kyle?
So if Ceri paid you $2 and we got tails, right?
Yeah.
Then would Ceri win $4?
You'd go until you get heads. So the more tails you flip, the more money you earn until you hit heads, and then it stops.
But so you're not losing anything.
No, you're going to win something regardless.
Oh.
So I'm going to put down everything I own on this one.
Kyle, because if I double the correct answer.
No way.
So this is called the St. Petersburg paradox, conceived by Nicholas Bernoulli, but also written about by St. Petersburg resident Daniel Bernoulli. The winnings grow infinitely, so any cost should be worth it. And the paradox is that if this game cost anything over like $20, most people won't play because they won't think it's worth it.
That's
So you both
wild.
illustrated it perfectly. Sari's like, I'm not paying more than $2.
And Kyle's
like,
a
I
rich
only
man.
want net gains.
It means I'm a good gambler, which I don't know what that says.
All right, so that's 1 point to each of you. This is the tiebreak question.
Wow.
And I have a feeling Sari might get it right. So the last one I have is you are contestants on a game show, and the host shows you 3 doors and tells you that behind one of them is a brand new car. You choose door number 1, but before opening that door, the host opens door number 3 and reveals no car. He then asks if you'd like to stick with door number 1 or switch to door number 2. The question is, what is the probability of door number 2 having the new car behind it?
I mean, listen, I have watched, what is it? Let's Make a Deal. Is that the
You
one with
got
the
it.
3 doors? I've watched that.
With host
lot.
Monty Hall.
I've watched the Wayne Brady one a lot more, honestly.
All right, so you can think of this as the Wayne Brady problem.
The Wayne Brady problem, thank you. Which also is the problem when you're an improviser and you can't find any friends. It's the Wayne Brady problem. I want to say that just apocryphally, it's always the wrong choice to switch when the host asks you, do you want to switch to door number 2? They're always like, I should have stuck with number 1. So I'm going to go with, like, for some reason, it's like a 63% chance that the car is behind door number 1 still.
Oh, Kyle, so close. Sari, do you want to bring this home?
Well, we'll see. I could embarrass myself and fall on my face. I think it's the exact opposite of what you said, where it is you always want to switch because there is only a 33% chance that it is behind door number 1. Because when you picked door number 1, then it was one of 3 options. Yeah. But then if you switch and you pick door number 2, there's a 50% chance. Like door number 2 now has a 50% chance that it has the car behind it because there are only 2 options left. And so even though presumably it's the same, it mathematically there's something weird about it.
Yeah. It's like a weird mathematical thing. And in reading into it, I discovered there are differing opinions on this. It is the Monty Hall problem, named after Let's Make a Deal host Monty Hall. And the sort of classic answer is that your original choice had a 1/3 chance of being correct, and that has not changed. So there's still a 2/3 chance that it's one of those other 2 doors. And you know that it's not 3, so door number 2 has a 2/3 chance of being right.
Oh, 2/3.
That's like a weird, but it's a weird way of looking at it. And some people are like, no, once you know it's not that door, then it becomes 50-50. So there's disagreement, but the fun answer is that it's 2/3. That's what I got, you guys. I count that as Sari wins because that was
I count that. Yeah.
Oh, I was like, we're
Congrats,
both wrong.
Sari.
It's still a tie.
You had a smarter answer, though. Sari, thanks so much for being here today and for helping us out with all of these stochastic problems that we have come across. Would you mind letting the people know where to find you and what you're up to?
Yeah, of course. The best place to find me is on the podcast that I co-host, SciShow Tangents. We're on YouTube. We're anywhere you get your podcasts. And Seth works on it as well. Seth edits all my bad jokes out, so I sound really funny and smart. And if you like science words, I always do the etymology of the topic at the start of every episode. So I try and dabble in linguistics too. That's the best place to find me. I'm also very easily Googleable. If you just Google Ceri, Ceri, Riley, Riley, which is maybe like now as I say it out loud, a very vain thing to say. But it's a weird name.
You'll find what I've done.
You'll find what I've done.
And you should find Ceri.
Yes, absolutely.
Find Ceri.
Yes, Ceri, it's been so wonderful having you on.
Yeah.
We are also all over the internet. You can find Butter No Parsnips on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Butter No Parsnips Podcast, and on TikTok at Butter No Parsnips, and at bnppod.com. And if you like today's episode, consider giving us a 5-star rating or review on any of those social media sites or wherever you heard us.
And if you really like today's episode, consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/butternoparsnips. Donating $5 or more earns you a shout out either on social media or here on the podcast.
Thanks so much to all of you. You help us make what we make.
And with that, I've been Kyle Imperator.
I've been Emily Moyers, and you've been
Ceri Riley. I thought you were turning over to the audience.
And you've been the Butter No Parsnips audience.
And this has been Butter No Parsnips. Game show fanfare.
Butter No Parsnips is produced by Seth Glicksman, Kyle Imperator, and myself, Emily Moyers. The main and accompanying themes were composed by Kyle Imperator.